Hello everyone, from Tormy and welcome to this tutorial. In the previous video we saw how the Daws turned out to be identical to each other in a simple export. But do they remain so even with a mix? Maybe using plugins and using faders? That's what we'll see in this video. It wasn't planned to create a second video on the same topic as the first, but a deeper digging was necessary for some of the feedback I received. On the one hand, they are interesting, on the other hand, since they have generated questions, it is necessary to give answers. Let's look at these feedbacks one by one. Ignazio Zichitella writes, "Why is not included in the comparison Studio One? Because there is not. I do not have it. Studio One was made by the same team that made Nuendo and Cubase. Consequently, the algorithms it incorporates are practically the same. It would be like to compare Nuendo with himself. Beyond that, I've compared all the platforms I own and use, with the exception of for Mixbus. And this exception I explained in the previous video. It is to verify the legend according to which there will be all this great color in inserting Mixbus, where a track must be sent to a bus and then to the master to color like Giotto. Instead, we have seen that the Cosmic Void colors more. Even if there is some small noise resulting, it's in fact irrelevant. We have already seen it and we will see it again today." Matteo Cremolini writes, "Great Tormy, for the precision you use is a must. Thanks, Matteo. Can a test with a common plugin through Daws make sense? Just to see how the audio engines behave in extra core processes? According to the common sense, I should say no, because the engine does nothing but sends the signal instead to itself to the plugin, and it receives it instead from itself from the external plugin, so it always works in the exact same way. It is the plugin, possibly, that works differently depending on the system on which it is integrated and does not have to do with the DAW but with the machine. Anyway, let's try it today. It's something that makes sense only to dispel any doubt." Dario Agrillo writes, "However, if you import a single file, it is a partial measure. In my opinion, you should import a number of files, mix them with the faders at 0 decibels and compare the various bounces." True, but in the end it's useless, because in fact one simply adds up, and a sum is always done in the same way. 5 plus 4 equals 9. Commutative property, 4 plus 5 always 9. There is no better 9 of the others, simply because you have inverted the order of the addends. But today we do this test. Why? Because there is another thing to take into consideration that we will see in detail, in case one decides to take a test. In fact, we will see how to do a null test. It doesn't mean simply putting two files together, inverting the polarity of one and saying, "Ah, it does," or "it doesn't." Because it's even worse, because if it doesn't, there are reasons that you have to go to investigate, and with much precision, because there is no 9 better than another 9. Fausto the Bellis writes, "I'm preparing a test in which I will add 5 stems. Each track will have a number of plugins, not random, and I will do on Cubase 10, Pro Tools and Reaper. I want to answer you immediately. The test between Pro Tools and Reaper in this context has already been done in the video I referred to, which you can still find the link both above and below in the description box. So, if Pro Tools and Reaper are identical to each other, and Pro Tools and Reaper are identical to Nuendo, which is practically Cubase, you are about to do a test that has already been done, and which will give the exact same results, unless there are errors in the execution." Then he says, "I've always been curious about the sums of these DAWs. The sums are always done in the same way. The algorithms are always the same, because they must necessarily be done in this way. The sums you learn right from the primary schools when you make them in college or university do not change. 5 plus 4 equals 9, and 4 plus 5 equals 9, just as 5 plus 2 plus 2 always returns 9. In these three cases, the sums are different, but the result is the same. Neither of these three 9s is better than the other." Matteo Nost, who says, "The real missing test is the comparison between the playback of the Daws. A second PC with a high-quality converter is required to record the first." Exactly! It is a similar test in some ways, but completely different. Therefore, it is beyond the scope of this video. And he continues, "The feeling I have with Cubase of having more solid playback, nobody takes it from me. And I've been using Reaper for 7 years for everything." Well, in the reality, Reaper gives you possibilities that Cubase and Nuendo do not give you, such as playback quality settings. While not part of the argument for this video, I want to show you a feature of Reaper. Then we enlarge the screen and give Alt and Enter, or go to Project Settings, and here this window opens, where you find Playback Resample Mode. Reaper comes out with a medium level to make it work well on all machines, conversely Nuendo and Cubase don't. But nothing prevents you from setting it to a value more appropriate for you. Maybe instead of medium, set it to extreme. There are many other settings available on Reaper which you can modify to your liking, consequently have better audio in playback. You save it as default with Save as Default Project settings, and you automatically know that you have these values on any project you create. Back to the topic, I open Nuendo to see how it is set up, and the settings are equivalent to all the other Daws. So here, the two tracks with which I do the Mixdown, on one is installed FabFilter Pro Q2 in its instance, let's say normal, while on the other track there is always the Q2 but it's zero latency mode, which honestly it requires more machine resources to do this. Then it puts the computer a little more under pressure. Perfect. Now I open the mixer and we see that I have set the second track to more than 2 decibels compared to the first, and consequently there is also the intervention of the faders. Okay, let's close everything and now let's see what happens. Now let's go back to our screen where there are Mixdowns of all platforms: Reaper, Nuendo, Audacity, Ableton, Mixbus, and then Fruity Loop and Adobe Audition. Let's start comparing them with each other. Let's start listening to Reaper and the two tracks I've made the Mixdown with. They are two of my productions. One is Tequiero and the other is El Cuore non mente, both by Barbara Vagnini. You find the links of the songs here down below. They are also on all digital markets. You will hear two songs together for each track you see here. They have been treated in the way I have shown you earlier. I go in playback. I start with Reaper and Nuendo. Perfect. They cancel each other out. We had no doubt about this. We have seen it before. They must necessarily cancel each other as well as on all the other platforms. Let's continue the comparison. Now let's compare Reaper with Audacity. Again, the null is verified. So if A equals B and B equals C, A equals C, right? So if we compare Nuendo with Audacity, we should get null. Perfect, exactly as expected. Okay, let's go ahead. So let's keep Reaper as a reference and let's compare it with Ableton. Well, even with Ableton we have the null. Now Mixbus. Let's hear if there is the Raspberry we heard last time and at what level it is. Excellent. A very slight Raspberry, much lower than the one heard in the previous video, for the simple reason that we no longer work in the red area but in the yellow area. The yellow zone is quite consistent. If we work, say, between the green area and the half of the yellow area, it will become practically nothing. However, we are at imperceptible levels both in this video and in the previous one. Here it colors even less, but why does Mixbus distort? In the core of Mixbus, since it was taken by hardware and then adapted, it is as they put a little plugin that introduces this little distortion, a permanent plugin, which is not visible. There is no possibility to exclude it. Why? Because it is emulating analog hardware of the Harrison console, among other things, not the top that was around. Recall that it used the low slew rate and very common integrated circuits. They are the MUA741, 5% tolerance carbon resistor, and so on. Consequently, there is a little touch, but it is completely insignificant. We can, for all the intents and purposes, consider it null. Okay, there is always the one that said colors. Okay, color fixation at all costs, but these are psychological problems, psychological issues. They have nothing to do with the objective data we are seeing here now. Now let's go to see some problems that Fruity Loop and Audition have, problems that could break the null test if you don't know about them. Here on Fruity Loop you heard a faint residue. Let's see why in a moment. I anticipate to you it is not color. There is a residue due to platform inaccuracy, which we will analyze in a moment. Let's see now Adobe Audition. Perfect. Audition cancels itself perfectly, but I want to illustrate its problem. Look at the position of the fader. It lies at plus 3.01 decibels and not at 0 decibels. We will see why in a moment, as it is an official Adobe Audition feature. It behaves like this when it works in multi-track mode. Not when it exports the single track, but when it exports a mix. Then it makes a mixdown. Let's see now the details of both platforms. In Fruity Loop we have this difference as the control of the faders is not expressed in decibels, but as percentage. In fact, if we right-click select type in value, we have this number with 7 decimals, but actually the 0 decibels that we have, look in the top left corner here while I highlight it, is indicated like this, 2 decibels at 109%. Here it indicates 109%. Attention, because here it indicates 0.8694375 and 0.86 means 86%. But it stays at 2 decibel even if you enter a higher value. Indeed, as you can see here, it stays at 2 decibels. Also, look at the number that has changed from 1.25 to 1.26, but the value in decibel remained at 2. If we look at these, we will notice that there are variations. Now, it does not consider these variations in the expression of the decibels up there. It does not allow me to enter, as it's normally done in audio, a value in decibels, but as a percentage, which has not any meaning. By the way, I can't even calculate exactly how much plus 2 decibels can be, which I need for the experiment, as the decibels are a logarithmic scale, while the percentage is a linear scale, and not knowing how exactly it is implemented in the platform, it's impossible to correctly apply it. We just know that from 86.9% to 87.1%, that's about 2 decibels, but the signal doesn't know it. Therefore, we hear all variations between 86.9 and 87.9. So the difference we hear is because we don't have exactly 2 decibels. This is not color. This is for a Fruity Loop flow, a really bad flow for this kind of comparison, of course. Let's see what happens with Adobe Audition. Adobe Audition has a feature. If you're working on a multi-track project, exporting a project or file, it is attenuated by 3 decibels. Online, you will also find a video by Russel explaining how to prevent this from happening. In some cases, though, it doesn't work. As usual, you can find the link of the video here above and also in the description box down below. From the measurements I made, I noticed that it does not attenuate by exactly 3 decibels, but by 3.01 decibels. So when importing the file into Reaper to perform the null test, I had to boost it by 3.01 decibel. So is it Adobe Audition color? Absolutely not at all. It is simply an attenuation. compensating Adobe Audition signal is cancelled out perfectly. If you've forgotten it, go back to the beginning of this video and watch it. As a test, let's simulate the difference that exists between Fruity Loop and any of the other tracks that we know are perfectly identical, against Reaper and Nuendo, for example. Now let's simulate a very small difference, equal to 0.0054 decibels, so truly infinitesimal. The aim is to hear what's the audible entity of the difference into the null test. You have heard that the small difference is audible. We are more or less in the order of the Fruity Loop tolerance window. Therefore, when we do a null test, we must be very careful for this type of error, systematic error, especially when we use automation. If you're not careful, the risk is the invalidation of the test. In conclusion, as expected, there is not and there must be not any difference between or among the various platforms, even mixing multiple tracks and including plugins. If you have automations and you want to do this test, be careful that the automations are all declared in exactly the same way. The same goes for crossfades and fade-in and fade-out curves, as a small difference can invalidate the null test, making you believe in completely not existent and completely fictitious colors. In the case of Mixbus, the small difference heard is foreseen by the technical specifications, but it is completely irrelevant to the practical hands, completely negligible, so useless. It is therefore not justified to use Mixbus to color a track or a mix or a master. That's all. If you like to dig into operational differences among the Daws, like for instance the MIDI jitter, please check the website admiralbumblebee.com and watch his video. Links are here above the right corner and down below in the description box. Please subscribe to the channel, click on the bell to be notified by new videos uploaded, and if you liked it, please put a like and share it with your friends. That's it for the moment, thanks for watching.